the name of our very quick-witted and wise Jesus. So, let's give the lawyer the benefit of the doubt, just for a second. I promise, only for just a second. Because he's with this group of Pharisees that come up to Jesus, and he is a lawyer. I mean, that's the only time the term lawyer is used in the Gospel of Matthew, the nomikos. That's it. That's the one. And so he would be like a professional theologian. At least that's according to Dr. Eugene Boring, who does the commentaries on Matthew that I like to go to and look at. So he has heard that the Sadducees got their, well, I don't know, what's the sort of theological version of what Michigan State did to Michigan yesterday?
A whipping.
I'm sorry. The time will come, those of you that wear the blue and the maize. The time will come, and so we're going to be even-handed when that time comes, I promise. I might not be alive when that happens.
They had their chance.
Hey, listen, never mind. We're going to move on here. Wonder how many text messages I'm going to have when I get out of the home. And so let's give this lawyer the benefit of the doubt. He's heard that the other folks are whipped, and he's a professional theologian, so he's going to ask a question that's going to cause some trouble for Jesus. He's got the answer, or he at least has a question that's going to stump this particular rabbi that has been making such a reputation for himself, and of course causing so much stir in the temple during this particular week that he was there. And so he asks the question, teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? That's a pretty simple question, isn't it? We Episcopalians have known that for like 4 centuries now, because this whole summary of the law has been in our form of worship since 1549. Remember, we went all the way through those prayer books, and we did the Eucharistic prayer, and the summary of the law until 1979 existed in our primary form of worship, in our rites that we did. So we knew the answer. We had the answer, but what is the question that the lawyer is asking? What is this all about? And it's actually, the test is actually in the question, but it's not really clear, is it? We 2,000 years later, are not really clear what the test is. So, I'm asking you, what was the test? Which of the laws is the greatest? Okay, there's your clue. What's the test? For Jesus to pick a law, for Jesus to pick a law which was the greatest, risk something. And that would be that if he says this law is the greatest, then would that not be diminishing the other laws? Right? Would that not be? That's the test. It's pretty simple. And in this period of time, we've used this expression before, there are 613 laws as we understand it. And how many, let's see, there are negative laws, 365, one for every day of the year. And approximately, well, what is it about? 248 positive laws. And every law was meant to be equal. Every law was meant to have at least equal weight. Now, that's not to say that the rabbis somewhere out in the hinterlands, in the diaspora of the Hebrew people, the Judean people, that's not to say that they wouldn't summarize things. They did. They did. But the lawyer is being very particular. So which of the laws is the greatest? And Jesus goes to, if there was a law that would be the greatest, he goes to the Shema. The Shema. I've done this before. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. That's in Deuteronomy, which is, that's sort of, that corpus of laws, if you think about it. I don't know whether Jesus thought about it, because Jesus is a whole lot smarter than I am. I know that comes as a shock to some of you. But that's the Deuteronomistic code of laws that comes out of Deuteronomy, and that's primarily centered up in the northern kingdom. And he pulls from that other corpus of laws, what some people call the commentary on the law, the Levitical code. The Levitical code comes out of the southern kingdom, and he goes to that we read right here in the Old Testament. Verse 19:18 of Leviticus, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. He says, here is the, and most every, I don't know, I spent a year singing and working in a temple in New York City, Riverdale Temple in New York City, and all of the services began with the Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And extremists, sometimes people, when if they have time to do it, they will pray the mourner's Kaddish, or they will pray the dying person's prayer, or they will say, in times of extremists, when they're in deep trouble, they'll say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. That's their prayer. So they pull from so Jesus pulls from this important thing that he acknowledges as the Jew that he is. He acknowledges this is an extremely important law. And you shall love the Lord your God. And then he draws from that whole, as I said, that corpus around the temple. These are the rules and the laws of that the priesthood used in the celebrations of the law in the temple. And this one is, love your neighbor as yourself. He said the first one, well, I'm sorry, I'm about to get that wrong, aren't I? The second one is like the first one. The second one is like the first one. What does that mean? What does it mean? If we say, well, that's just like, I don't know, that's just like, well, what we're about to say is a comparison. And that comparison means that we are able to interpret one by the other. That those of you who are mathematicians, this is not mathematics, this is arithmetic really, but if you put an equal sign there, on one side is love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your, what does it say here? It says, soul. All your soul and all your mind. The other versions say strength. But you put that on one side of the equation, and then you put the other, love your neighbor as yourself, then these two basically are, you take this away, this is gone. Right? Or if anything happens to this, it also happens to this, right? And on those days when you see so much evil in the world that you say, how on earth does a loving and truly existent God have these things happen? The only thing I can do today is I can only deal with helping my neighbor. You do that, you're still loving God. Or on that day when everybody you meet is being extraordinarily obnoxious and you just can't deal, then you're going to love and pray to the sovereign God, and you're still going to, you see, you can't take away that equals. It's going to happen. You're going to operate on one side or the other or both, and it's going to function that way. Wow. I've been hammering you folks over the last, 6+ years on this love God, love your neighbor thing. It's the number one. It's the top 10 on the tune decks. It's the, if Casey Kasem were still alive, we would be waiting for this law because it would be the number one. It would be it. In the Christian corpus. This is how we behave. This is what we do. This is why we get paid the big bucks to be Christians. get that. Whoa. Jesus asked them a question. Jesus, what do you think of the Messiah? Whose son is he? And the Pharisees responded, well, the son of David. Why do you think Matthew went to all that trouble at the beginning of the gospel? That it's da-da-da, begat so-and-so. We talked about this before. And then you get down to Joseph, who wasn't Jesus' real dad. But the connection is there. The Messiah is supposed to come from the house of David. And so Jesus says, well, if the Messiah is the son of David, then how is it that in Psalm 110, verse 1, he says, and it's quoted there, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet. Sit at my right hand. In that time, right meant south. Did you know that? Right meant south. Forward meant away from the Mediterranean Sea. Backward meant toward the Mediterranean Sea. Left hand was north, right hand was south. And that's a reference to where the palaces were, according to the temple. There's the temple on the south side are the palaces. So I'm going to sit you there. And how can you call your son, if you're the king, how can you call your son Lord? That's just, we know that. We can't do that. That's what that's all about. So Jesus creates a quandary to which there is no answer. And it's all done. Jesus is claiming the authority of being the Messiah. Matthew is having Jesus claim that authority. And in the role of that authority, Jesus is saying, here it is. It doesn't get any simpler than this. Forget this. No, don't forget the 613 laws. Don't do that. Don't forget those. Because for some people, keeping the 613 laws is a way of saying to God, I love you. That's the way some people who are not Christian maintain their relationship with God. And remember, if you are in a loving relationship with God, you are in a loving relationship with all that God created, all the people that God created. Oh, are there any exceptions to that? No. Well, that makes that little commandment a little bit harder, doesn't it? Because there are some folks that I don't think I can love. I don't know about you. So what does that mean? They are still God's creation. There's a quandary for you, isn't it? How does that work? How does that work? I don't know how it works. I don't know how it works, except that I acknowledge that in all of you that I love, and all of those individuals that I see behaving in this world in ways which I hate, that somehow or another God is present in all of that. God is acting. God is never not acting. God is never not present. God is always acting. Even if I, in my limited resources, my meager intellect, or my challenging circumstance, whatever that may be, can't see it. It was hard to be Christian in those days. But when Matthew was written, they were dragging some of those folks, parents and children, into places and letting the lions have a go at it. It was hard. It's hard to be Christian in the 21st century. It's hard to be a Christian in the 21st century. They're not dragging us into the lion's den, but my goodness, all you need to do is, well, you know, I don't have to tell you. You know how hard it is. So the message for today is a reminder that our sovereign God says that we got to do the best we can that we've got to do the best we can to love God with all our hearts, to love our neighbors as ourselves, to love ourselves as our neighbors are supposed to love us. Don't forget that. Please don't forget that. Give yourself the same grace that you are called upon to give to others. Don't give yourself more. Don't give yourself less. But let's do the best you can.